Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Self Leadership Podcast. We believe that good leadership starts with self leadership. And for us, that's all about living life as intentionally as possible. And today we are joined by our very exciting guest, Victor Naroditskiy, who is the CEO of SerenityGPT and has a PhD in AI and an academic background that he now merges with his year-long business experience. I am very excited to hear about what his 5 self-leadership practices are. So let's jump in.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Victor, and welcome to the Self Leadership Podcast. For those who haven't had the privilege yet of meeting you or hearing you speak, could you give our listeners and Anna and I a brief introduction to who is Victor?
Sure. So I grew up in Moscow. That was back in the 80s and 90s. Then I moved to the States, to Rhode Island, the smallest state. Spent 10 years there, mostly studying, got a PhD there. Really enjoyed the university life. Then moved to the UK, to Southampton to continue the academic path, which I did for another 5 years. Then got out of academia, joined a technology firm in capital markets, spent 10 years there. And for the last 2.5 years, I've been building my startup. I've been doing it full time for half a year. And it was the most fun experience I've had in terms of work. I have trouble calling it work because it's really life, but that's what it is.
Amazing. Your introduction is full of oxymorons, I feel. You've gone from the biggest country to the smallest state, and then you've done multiple years in academia and now to startup life. It feels like you've yin and yanged your way through your life so far, and it's super interesting.
I love how you phrase that. Yeah.
Anna and I have had the privilege of doing several of these episodes now. And in fact, this question was one that prompted us to start the podcast in itself, because there is not one correct answer. Everybody has their own interpretation of this phrase. So before we jump into a little bit more about your practices, we wanted to ask you, what does self-leadership mean to you?
To me, I think self-leadership starts with awareness. Just understanding that you have the agency, that you can affect your life, that you're not just following the path that has been laid out to you by whoever it is, by the society, by the social norms, by your parents, by kind of whatever everyone around you is doing, but that you can actually have the intention and have the capacity to change it and to choose, in a way, your own path. And we're not going to get too philosophical here, but basically do something different from what you have been doing, you would have been doing otherwise without that awareness.
I feel like we're definitely able to get philosophical here. It's very quick, but I'm happy to jump in if you want to explore that topic. But I do really, really like your answer. And actually, it's not a million miles from my answer. And I don't want to speak for Anna, but from hers as well, although I know she has a favorite phrase that she would say instead of it. What I wanted to follow up with is, do you recall when that answer came to you? Is there a specific point in your life or a specific moment that led you to that realization?
I don't think there was a specific moment. I think it's more like a process, and it's still happening. I know that for a very long time, I was not as aware as I am now. And if I look back at, say, my 20s and my 30s, then for the most part, I think if I had a chance to relive that time, I would be doing a lot more. With myself, with my life, with my career, with whatever.
It sounds to me, Victor, like you've already been doing a lot.
Yeah, well, thanks. But I think there is a difference between excellence and perfection. And I'm not striving for perfection. I think that's a trap. It's very dangerous to do that because you end up spending too much time on something that doesn't matter that much. But the concept of excellence, where whatever you're doing well. Where well doesn't mean perfect. It just means you do it fast enough, you basically get the results. And if I look at it through that lens, I think I could have been doing a lot more in my 20s and my 30s.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm very curious. Are you comfortable sharing with us the biggest step you took, the biggest risk, the biggest change that you made that allowed you to step into self-leadership and kind of an intentional lifestyle and not following the well-trodden path?
I'll answer a different question because I don't think if I can answer this one. But the biggest thing that I did that is self-leadership is starting my own company. And I'm glad I did it. And I know that there were many reasons why I could have not done it ever at all. But just that happened is to me a good example of what self-leadership is. How that happened, and was there a single step that I can say, okay, that allowed me to do that? I don't think I have any of that.
Yeah. And I just absolutely love how you said that you're thoroughly enjoying that journey. I mean, Josh and I are founders ourselves, and I feel like in my founder journey, it's sometimes brought the biggest highs, but also the lowest lows. So to hear you speak about it with so much joy seems to be an indicator that you've really stepped into alignment with yourself.
I'm happy in what I do. I think alignment is still something to strive for, but I'm enjoying the journey.
I like your quote about there's always a lot of reasons not to do something. And I was actually thinking about this yesterday because it came up on a different podcast that I was listening to. And it was like the balance between fear and the times where you should lean into those thoughts. Like sometimes there's a situation where there's 1,000 reasons to not to do something and you shouldn't do it. But equally, there's some situations where there's 1,000 reasons not to do something, but that's exactly why you should do it. And distinguishing between the two can be quite tricky. So it's really interesting to hear you articulate the idea of building a business in that way too, because it resonates with me and I'm sure our listeners too.
Well, let me first give you my philosophical answer. I think whatever you are evaluating, whatever decision you take, whatever point of view you have at the moment, there will be 1,000 reasons pro and con. So I don't think there is any absolute right or wrong, good or bad. In the case of starting the company, I think it was easy for me actually, in the sense that I've reached the ceiling in my day job at the time. I knew I had the right experience to build a team. That's what I've been doing in my previous job for a few years. I had a good network to build it from using my academic connections and professional connections. I knew I enjoyed doing it. Like I like creating things. And it's not like I had a line of big tech or other firms trying to hire me. The most, I think, difficult thing was appreciating that this can actually become a full-time job. And once it did, it kind of changed everything in the sense that now you are your own boss. You don't have this excuse that you have a boss, that someone is paying you to do something and you should be doing something. That kind of goes back to this, that teaches you self-leadership because, well, whatever you do is what gets done, and it kind of starts and stops with you, and you set the limits. And in my case, it's really exhilarating. I love exploring what I can do. And in general, the process of kind of breaking the boundaries. One of the exercises that I did at some point, and that I think is probably a great one for everyone to try, is just go outside to a place where there are 20 or more people that can hear you and sing a song. Just try doing that. And the effect, if you get to do that, the effect is on me was mind blowing. It's like I've taken a very high dose of MDMA. It's like you just feel like so happy. Like, look, the world is yours. You figured it out. You did it. You figured out how to do something that you thought was impossible for you to do, which means you can do anything.
My stomach just dropped at the thought of doing that. Which I guess is the point.
Absolutely. Josh, I feel like you and I have been set a challenge.
My word. Next Friday, London should beware. So I'm guessing, Victor, you actually did this exercise based on your story. So what made you do it? And what did you think?
It was part of a self-improvement training program that I took part in. It was the only time I did it in my life, but it was actually pretty good. I think it's all of the practical elements are the ones that really teach you things. I don't think theory can teach you much, but if you're part of a group that gets to do things, then you can actually learn. And what you think, it doesn't matter. It's the fact of doing that.
The song will remain a mystery.
Yes. For sure. But I like what you say there about the connection from work and the day job and then becoming your own boss. And then at that point, this kind of realization of the importance of self-leadership. And that's not to say that it's not important for everybody, but absolutely when you are your own boss, it becomes a little bit more magnified. In my experience, I'm talking for myself there, but that is a really lovely bridge to the idea of this podcast to begin with, and how Anna and I had this conversation at the start. But then also is a brilliant bridge into the main bulk of our conversation today, which is to explore the practices, the thoughts, the habits that enable our guests to be the best version of themselves, as whatever they define that to be. For you, that sounds like aware. For you, it sounds like that means to be a great boss for yourself. So without further ado, let's jump into those 5 practices. So let's start nice and easy. Victor, can you share with us a self-leadership practice that has had a good impact on you and your journey so far?
When you're your own boss, you're not just responsible for yourself, assuming that you have a company and a team, you also have a team. One of the things that becomes clear at some point is that your time is a very valuable resource. And how you allocate it and how you decide what to focus on becomes very important. I think I saw this clip on Instagram or somewhere about Steve Jobs basically saying that focus means actually not doing something that you really want to do, but doing something that you have to be focused on. And that discipline, the faster you get to that, I think the higher the chances of success are, because it's just too easy to jump at the million things that are there and that need to be done, but then the prioritizing them and in the order of the most payoff is something that requires conscious effort and intentionality and self-leadership. And then the same kind of applies to things outside of the company, outside of work. You understand that time is important. So what do you really enjoy, since now you have so little time left for anything else? Which friends do I want to go out with? How much time do I want to spend doing sports versus watching TV or whatever? Running a company helps you realize that small things matter. And if you dedicate even a small amount of time to something that needs that attention, then you would see the results.
I totally hear you. And I love what you're saying about prioritizing based on payoff, because that really bridges prioritization within work and prioritization within your personal life really beautifully. And I'd love to know, how do you go about figuring out what is going to have the highest payoff for you?
I don't have any methodology. I think it's mostly intuitive and based on some data. So you look at the things that worked and you make an effort to delegate, to kind of be strategic about the things that maybe you don't need to be doing anymore. And it may take you a lot of time now to delegate it, but then once it's delegated, it's basically saving you a ton of time in the long term. I don't have any recipes. I'm not sure if they exist, but at least I don't have any. At this point, it's more about awareness that this is important and actually making acting based on that awareness, to make an effort to prioritize things and to try to estimate payoff. One thing that I do is I have my kind of to-do list and my diary, and then I analyze retrospectively a few things every so often. There is no fixed schedule, but roughly every week or every couple of weeks I go back and I'm like, okay, so what has been happening? Am I losing sight of the big picture? And I try to get this helicopter view and identify areas that need work.
I love that. And tell me, in your private life, so you mentioned, how much time do you want to spend doing sports versus, for instance, watching TV, which is something that I also struggle with sometimes. It's how much effort do I want to be putting into kind of self-development and doing things that make me grow, be it kind of mentally, emotionally, get physically better, and how much time do I want to relax and just be? Do you have any pointers as to how to answer that question?
I know that I'm not very good at it, so I'm probably the wrong person to provide pointers. I still get stuck on, like, it's so easy to just pick up your phone and start scrolling through Instagram. I think what I'm trying to do is schedule a few things into my calendar. For example, some training sessions if I'm using a coach. And even though I'm not very successful at that, I have some fixed times, say in the morning, that the first thing you do, like you go and do your exercises. I'm kind of naturally pushed into doing that. If I stop being productive if I work for too long, and I can feel that it's very easy to burn out. So, say doing some exercise or going for a run helps a lot, and I often do it in the middle of the day. Actually, that's what I do now. All of my exercises kind of in the middle of the day, and that I think that's helping me to have 2 productive days instead of just 1. So I think it's very important to make the first step. So sometimes you just feel down and you're like, should I go for a run or not? And then if you go for a run and you just start running, then you come back a different person. You're so much happier. So basically being aware of that and kind of overcompensate and knowing that you feel like you don't want to do anything, but then actually making yourself do that because you know you'll feel better once you start.
I might go for a run today. I've been putting it off. After this conversation, I feel like there's no excuse.
No excuse. Yeah, to be honest, I've just started going back to the gym. I negated it for a couple of weeks while things got crazy. And we actually had this conversation last weekend, didn't we? Where I said the irony is it's the first thing to go when things get too much. But actually, when it gets too much, is exactly when you need it. And I really struggle with that back and forth. So yeah, the last couple of days I've started going again in the morning because then it's not because it's done, but there's little chance of it being interrupted or a reason for it to come up that I can't do it. Then you remember the benefits. You're like, why did I stop doing this for the last 2 weeks? I needed it. So yeah, I'm fully on board, Victor. I feel you. Well, let's move on to your second practice then. What is the second practice or topic that you think about that you think helps to bring you more awareness or to make you a better business leader? What's the second thing?
Yeah, so I think a lot, not a lot, but about the imposter syndrome. It's like, who gave me this opportunity, this power, this whatever, to actually be managing people and to be making decisions that affect other people? It's so easy to be stuck in a mediocrity. It's also kind of so easy to, if you try to go closer towards being great, and when you do that, it's not a zero-sum game. So it's not like if you're great, you're making other people mediocre or you're making them worse off. It's actually the opposite. You can inspire other people, you can help them become great. Making an effort and trying to be great, you're actually making everyone better off. And it's not like there is a finite amount of greatness in the world, which it may seem there is, because not everyone can be the boss, for example. Yeah, and if you're doing it in the manner that helps other people, then there's no reason not to feel good about yourself.
This really resonates with me in the sense that to me, this sounds like taking an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset, going from this kind of classical scarcity thinking that if I have more than somebody else has less, right? And there just isn't enough greatness out there in the world, to going towards, hey, there is lots of greatness, and let me try and tap into my own. And then how can that lead to other people being inspired and hopefully gently pushed towards doing the same? What a beautiful reframe for imposter syndrome. And what I'm curious about is, now that you've found this reframe for yourself, does the imposter syndrome still come up? And if so, how do you bring the reframe back to mind?
I think it comes up less and less. And I think that also has to do with me becoming more and more used to this reality of not having a boss. And I'm really enjoying that.
Mhm. What is greatness for you, and how did you go about defining that?
I think it has to do with creating stuff.
Mhm.
And by creating stuff, I mean, it could be just connecting people who are, if you did not connect them, they wouldn't be able to achieve as much. It could be building a business. I think it all boils down to doing things that manifest themselves in some kind of value, business value, aesthetic value, just creating something out of nothing in a sense.
It's almost that phrase of leaving the world better than you found it, because you're talking about you either leave impact behind or you leave new job vacancies behind for roles that you've created for other people, or you've pushed yourself forward into new territory that you weren't in before. So it's kind of you're leaving behind this footprint by striving for excellence.
The footprint doesn't have to be physical. So it could be I think Burning Man is a good example where you leave no trace, but it's an amazing event.
Yes,
And
makes
creating
sense.
something like that is like a great example of greatness.
And so in that sense, you've left impact behind, right? You've left memories behind, you've left impact behind. But it's that pursuit, emotion. It's the pursuit of greatness that creates something, whether that something is tangible or emotional. It's the pursuit of greatness that leaves this trace behind.
So the trace being just the emotional trace, not the physical trace.
Which is sometimes, I think, bigger than we think, right? So often we measure value, I feel, in our society by kind of physical and tangible output, whereas to be able to say, hey, I've created something, an experience that is no longer exists, right? Because it was confined in time and space and so on, and yet it has touched so many people. It's incredibly powerful, and I feel like if we honed in a bit more on that, we might also start questioning kind of the traditional definition of productivity, for instance.
Yeah. I think about productivity a bit, and almost wherever you look, you see people engaged in unproductive activities. Like very few people are creating something, and then there is, I don't know, probably like 80% of people are doing compliance, are doing basically things that relate to whatever work that allows, well, either prevents bad things from happening or are just linked to bureaucracy and people being hugely inefficient. But so in all of the inefficiencies of any large organization or even small ones as well, the amount of time that's spent on productive work is minimal. And yet we have this wonderful civilization. I think that that's kind of refreshing to appreciate that all of the things that we love are exist despite of how selfish, inefficient, bureaucratic, kind of completely irrational we are. And it doesn't take much, well, in percentage terms at least, to create all of this. And I'm really amazed at how far we've made it. And I kind of sense that we may be heading towards a crash just by looking at the number of disruptive events and the speed at which they get the accelerated pace of them. And just, I don't know how much longer we've got with this wonderful civilization of ours, but it's a fun ride.
I was just going to say your perspective sounds very hopeful.
Yeah.
before you said that final piece. But I do really, just staying with the hopeful kind of element. I really like what you're saying about, yes, of course, inefficiencies exist. Lots of BAU exists. Lots of not so productive work exists, and yet there is so much by way of beauty, by way of innovation, by way of creation. And what I'm personally taking from this is that it's okay if the kind of creative work is small in terms of percentage of all the work that I do. As long as it's there, that's already super meaningful and potentially high impact.
Yeah, it segues nicely from the end of the last topic. It's the finiteness of life. There were two events in my life that kind of helped me take a simpler view of life. I turned 40 and my son was born. First realizing that I actually don't have enough time in my life to do all of the things that I want to do. And before it was like, there's plenty of time for everything, so I can spend time on whatever I like. But basically appreciating that you will die at some point, that was a bit of a foreign concept until I turned 40, is helping you not fuss about things and actually get going on the things that you feel are important. And in the same vein, realizing that the most important thing in your life comes out of nowhere. So my son, for in this instance, is also kind of refreshing, that it's helping you just put all of the things in perspective. Like, how did this happen? Now you have someone that you think you're ready to die for, and that's not something that probably existed just a month ago. And I think to me that just helps me take a lighter view on everything else that I felt was important. By virtue of that, it helps me make decisions faster, and add finiteness of life to that. What matters is to decide fast and to move fast, not necessarily, well, definitely not worry about things for too long, or at all if you can, and not waste time.
This instantly makes me think of a phrase that Josh likes to say, which is, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. It sounds like, your 40th birthday was definitely a catalyst to realizing that even more deeply. And I also have a follow-up question on what you said in regards to your son being born. Could you elaborate a bit how, what that did with you and how it changed your view of both the kind of finiteness of life and also what's important in life?
It took me in the same direction that things that you thought were important may not be that important, and you should not be worrying about stuff too much, because all of a sudden you have something that is so important and you could never imagine it before. And then on the other hand, you know that there is someone who is in a way a continuation of you, but who is not you. And that kind of also in a way lets you be less precious about your own life.
I had the same experience. I've described it as it expands the scale that you can use to measure these things. Because like before my son was born, as I say, it was a scale of 0 to 10. Like things like, I don't know, what was going on with work would be like a 9 because it was right at the top of my scale. It was like one of the most important things that was going on in my life. And then your son appears, and suddenly now the scale expands massively. And so like there's my son at 10 and everything else is like a 7 at best. It was like a complete reframe of what was important. I felt like it allowed you to make decisions quicker because then they've been pegged down in terms of their importance. So the risk felt smaller.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I resonate that massively. Yeah.
Let me just come back to finiteness of life for one more second. If you take it to the limit, and I think it's a good exercise in general, I just think what will happen if you go all the way. So imagine that you know that you're going to die tomorrow. How would you behave today? What would it change? Would you care as much about whatever it is that you think is important, about what other people think about you, about social norms, about whatever? Or would you do something what is it that you actually want to do? And now is your last chance to do it. Well, what would you do? And then just try to extend that back to now and see what it is that actually matters to you. Maybe that's one recipe that I gave you inadvertently.
Love it. We got a recipe out of Victor. Yeah, no, but I couldn't agree more. Like the version of that I've encountered and thought about is, if you had one more year to live, only one more year, how would you spend that year? What would fall away? What would you double down on? But sometimes I found that a bit abstract in a way, or a bit difficult to imagine. So the thing that really helped me is doing a little meditation where you imagine yourself at the end of your life. Say you are 90, 95, however old you want to be at the end of your life, and you are older, you are weaker, but you imagine yourself still with kind of full presence of mind. And from that perspective, you look back on your life, and you look back on kind of your current self, and you kind of reflect and think, hey, what are the things that I really am glad that I did? What are the things that I wished I'd stopped doing earlier or started doing earlier? And what are some like words of advice that I would love to give to my current day self? And then once you come out of that meditation, you write a letter from that 90, 95-year-old self to your current self, and you just share those reflections and kind of pieces of wisdom and advice. And doing that felt so powerful to me, because it really, I feel like it cuts through all the noise, doesn't it? And it really shows you what's the stuff that will really matter.
You made me do it once.
I did. How
How
was
did that
that
go?
for you? How was that for you, Josh?
I said I should change my wording. You didn't make me, you encouraged me.
Thank you. Yes.
The thing I find helpful about it, and I think this builds on what Victor's saying and what you alluded to, is like it sounds like we are all aware of this finite of life, but then we also have this abundancy of it feels like we could do anything. And so like the big step is how do you go from the fact that you could do anything to like what do I do now? Like it's a huge jump. So the letter helps to reframe, okay, like here's the 999,000 things that don't matter, and here's 3 that do. Like that was helpful for me. That was what I took from it.
So, and then I think kind of looking at it from a higher point of view and realizing that nothing really matters. I'll be a little controversial here, but all of our lives, all of the things that are so important to us, they like, who cares? And I think that also gives you another tool to basically be a little less serious about yourself and perhaps put things in perspective and take a lighter view of life that may actually help you be happier in whatever you're doing. As in the end, we all know the end, that it's the same for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was at a funeral this summer of a person that was close to our family. She had not reached kind of conventional measures of success in that, you know, she didn't create something extraordinary, build something extraordinary, have a high flying career. And yet when we were there at her grave, everyone was remembering how kind and caring and loving she had been, and how much warmth she had left in each and every one of us. And it just made me feel like that's what matters most. Like if you were an Einstein or a Mozart or whatever, that's fantastic. But now when we remember Mozart or Einstein, we don't remember the person. We remember what they did. And, you know, it's only very loosely, it's linked in our minds to who these people were. But to have left tangible warmth and love within other people's lives, within other people's souls, like it to me, it just felt like that is the single most important thing you can do. And in a way, it's similarly to what you said, Victor, it takes off the pressure from, you know, all of this performing and building and so on. And then it allows you to do it from a place of joy and curiosity and experimentation, as opposed to having to prove anything to anyone.
I agree.
Yeah.
We should move on. Your penultimate, Victor. Penultimate habit, practice, thought, topic.
Yeah, I think it goes back to singing a song and realizing that you can break the boundaries, go beyond the limits you've set for yourself. Just awareness of what is possible. And that can then give you ideas on where your self-leadership can take you and what you can actually accomplish. I think it boils down to just realizing that you can actually do something different, making the first step, seeing where it takes you, learning from it, and just keep going. And especially when you are building a business, I think it's pretty much any business. Just thinking about my field that is super overheated now, you have to do something different. Otherwise, you're not just gonna cut through the noise. Well, you don't have to. Luck is a big factor in all of this. Connections is a huge factor. But it may help if you do something different. Just being aware that you can do more than you potentially thought you could do is very important. And also, I think it depends on whether or not you enjoy that particular dimension. Like, do I care about the boundaries? Do I want to push the limits and see where it takes me? Am I enjoying that? Because if not, I don't think everyone needs to do it for any reason. But I find it to be a very interesting exercise.
Well, I was just going to say, because you could apply that to Anna's anecdote there about her friend at the funeral from the summer. Is you could apply that same thinking to kindness, right? How far could I take this as a practice? It doesn't have to be the tangible work. It could just be this person, like I dedicate my time and my energy to being kind and thoughtful.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could basically, do something that people don't normally do. Say, like find someone who you want to help and go out of your way to help them, and just for no reason. So I have there are two other things that I wanted to say here. One is about boundaries, just appreciating that our standard day-to-day way of life is just one way. We went to Japan for last New Year's, and appreciating how you could have a civilization as advanced, even maybe more advanced in some respect, than the Western civilization, but built on completely different principles, in particular about what it means to be individual, where in a way it's anti-individualist rather than the Western way of life. And then you can be as advanced. And then that also kind of helps you realize that you could have this completely horrible system, and that they could be very successful from the kind of civilization point of view, despite all of the things that we feel are completely wrong. That there is more than one way of living. When you're breaking boundaries from your daily routine, you're basically just exploring something that actually may be normal in a slightly different scenarios.
Oh yeah, I like that. I like that. And Victor, tell me, so some of our listeners right now, they may be hearing you speak and think, yeah, there is something I'd really like to try. There is something that I'd really like to have a go at. And yet I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if it's possible. What piece of advice would you give them?
I just go and try it. I mean, that's an easy one. Just say, give it a try. And if you have trouble motivating yourself, think what is the worst thing that could happen. Let me just use my favorite example of singing a song. Like, you'll get a couple of weird looks, but are you gonna die from it?
And say the resistance is high. The fear is high. The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, whatever it may be. Anything that you think can help with that?
Just maybe that other recipe. Imagine you're gonna die tomorrow,
Mm.
and see if somehow there is something you really want to do, and now imagine you cannot delay it anymore. Would that help?
Mm.
Become part of a community that
Mm.
does something like that.
Mm.
I think there's the group dynamic. We can do a lot more as a group,
That's so true.
even though in the end you will have to sing the song. It will be very personal, and no one is going to be supporting you there. But just being part of the community that does that is a huge motivator.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I actually really like those two pieces of advice together. On the one hand, the finiteness of life as the element to create urgency. As you were saying that, imagine you've only got until tomorrow. I could feel the sense of urgency regarding my own projects, and then the kind of the softer, the more supportive, and find help and find community, and you don't have to be in this alone. So I really like the interplay of those two together.
Yeah.
I feel like it softens the harshness of it alone as well. Like if you say in isolation, like what if you died tomorrow? Like it's deliberately that way, but it is obviously quite sharp. If you use it in the context of making a decision, actually, I feel like it reframes it and it softens it in a nice way. It makes it more palatable. Well, Victor, that brings us on to your final self-leadership practices. Would you be so kind to share what that might be with us, please?
Yeah, so that has to do with stillness and movement. With basically finding the beauty in the moment, going on a Vipassana silent retreat for 7 days and moving very fast. And I love this quote from a film that I actually don't like at all called Ford versus Ferrari. The protagonist is talking about how he's a racing driver, and he says that when you reach 7,000 RPM, everything slows down. And I think I just love that idea that when you're moving fast, extremely fast, things may actually appear very slow and you may enjoy that moment. I tried Vipassana. I left after, this is 7 days, it's a 10-day meditation retreat. I left after day 5, and one of the takeaways from me was that I actually enjoy movement, finding meaning in doing things and moving rather than in staying still and exploring what's within you. And I think it's, in a way, the same thing. You're just finding You're just finding meaning. And there is no contradiction in moving fast and yet appreciating the moment. It is very easy to not do that. But then it doesn't necessarily have to do with the speed of movement. It just has to do with our busyness. We could be moving slowly, but we could still be very busy. I think one of the podcasts I heard was when Sam Harris was on someone's podcast, and he said that in our busy lives, like he was using himself as an example, that his schedule is packed, and just realizing that you can take 30 seconds to kiss your wife goodbye when you're going somewhere is precious, and very few people actually realize that you can do that, but that makes a ton of a difference on how you live your life. So creating those moments while appreciating the richness and the fullness of our lives, whatever our conditions are, is something that is available to everyone, and yet very few people can realize that.
And it's very interesting what you say about the stillness and the movement piece, because, you know, for me personally, it's probably been a lot easier to be present and aware and introspective when I slow down, right? And it's also, I guess, part of the more common rhetoric. Slow down, pause, reflect, and get away from that constant movement and that constant busyness. But what I'm hearing you say is that movement doesn't have to equal busyness, and stillness does not have to equal presence, that those two things are actually not necessarily related, and that what you've discovered for yourself is that what works best is presence and awareness in movement. Is that fair to
Yeah,
say?
you phrase it beautifully. Yeah.
The concept really resonates, and it calls into question what I've personally been doing. It is a nice, yeah, it's a nice challenge to, it doesn't have to be either or, because I think that's a fear that I have, that
Yeah.
if I start moving faster again, I might lose the awareness and the presence and the introspection. And you're putting a direct challenge to that, which I appreciate.
And maybe you would like, not you personally, but in theory, like the subject, whoever it could be, like, would appreciate it more, right? Because that is the challenge. And I circle back to the idea of going for the exercise, but even when you're busy, it's like it's easy to go for it and do the exercise when you're dead quiet because you have the time. Actually, you value it, and the impact is even greater when you're busy. If you take the 30 seconds as Fit to say, to properly say goodbye to your wife, it's 30 seconds, but in the busyness, it feels a lot longer, and it holds more value. So like maybe that is the challenge: is it holds more value when you're busy. I don't know. I'm not very good at it yet. I'm trying.
I was very impressed the other day. I was on it was kind of like a webinar. It was a session hosted by someone in a network that I'm in, and you know, she was leading the session, and it was a Zoom video call, and it was all eyes on her. And then her child stepped in with a question. And instead of shooing away the child and be like, no, go away, I'm busy, she, in front of all of the 40, 50, 60 people who were there, she really took the time to be present with her daughter and to really hear her and see her and respond to her. And she did so completely, like, unapologetically. And that landed so strongly for me. You know, what I felt in that moment was, this is a person who really knows what her values are and what's important to her. And she's living by that, even in high stakes situations.
I was actually on that webinar, and that was my favorite part as well. It's like that's what I'm trying to be more of, like this art of not giving a fuck and not losing like what is actually important in your life.
It's powerful.
It's a hard balance for people that are quite busy and naturally pushing forward, right? Like that seesaw is a very difficult line to walk.
Yeah, I think to me the difficult bit is I'm still whenever I'm in a given scenario, say I'm on a webinar, I'm on a call, I have this tunnel vision that I have to be focused. And if, say, my son walks in, I'm like, hey, go away. But it doesn't have to be like that. And actually, that's kind of what I'm preaching, like try to break the boundaries, but first appreciate that there is another way of doing things.
100%.
I'll get there one day. We'll get there one day. Well, Victor, what a beautiful place to end. And now I wish I was on the webinar. I was the only person in this room who was not. But my promise to both of you is next time my son walks into the room, I will try my best to do that. So yes, this has been wonderful. Victor, before we wrap up, do you mind giving a very quick summary of the 5 points in isolation, just so our listeners can take them away?
Not having a boss is an interesting state. I don't think you have to experience it by quitting your job, but I think there may be other ways of getting to the same feeling. It could be just running something on the side. It doesn't have to be professional. Then the imposter syndrome, a cure for this may be to realize that you're just making the world a better place. You're not stealing anyone's greatness. And that anyone can do it. Like it's not like some people will put on this earth to be doing great things, and some people were not. So then finiteness of life, and I guess my only recipe, imagine that you're gonna die tomorrow and just see what's important. That may help you get a clearer view, becoming aware of what is possible and just questioning whether what you're doing day to day is the only way of doing things, and maybe something else will work better for you. Maybe interesting. The final topic was about stillness and movement, and that finding stillness in movement is also an option.
Really, really interesting. Victor, I've taken many things away from this conversation today. Perhaps most prominent for me is that we've done several of these episodes now, and typically the 5 practices are, for lack of better term, things to do. They're situations, they're tasks, exercises, something to do. This episode has looked at it from a different angle, and they are less things to do and more things that you can apply to the things that you do. And so it kind of comes at the exercise from a different plane, which I have found really insightful. So I've really enjoyed this episode. I'm sure our listeners too have done that as well. So I wanted to thank you for the different vantage point. It's been super interesting.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you so much, Victor.
Well, thank you to our listeners as well. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we will see you on the next one. So, Victor, thank you so much.
Thank you.